Good evening. My name is Lauren Neufeld, and presenting with me is Brianna Wallace and Becky Schelling. Our topic for this evening is cooking for diabetics, and we hope you'll enjoy.
Diabetics have to be careful with the food they consume because their liver can't process sugar and carbs like we can, because their blood sugars are causing their blood sugars to rise or drop. This way of eating controls the amount of carbs and sugars they take in, so their body isn't forced to work as hard. For this project, we had an interview with Candace, a dietitian here in Winkler. We asked her if there was a different meal plan for type 1 and type 2 diabetes. She said no. Type 1 is less forgiving because they are injecting insulin. However, every diabetic needs to make sure that they get enough carbs in their diet.
So after talking to a dietitian about meal planning, it was a lot easier to understand what diabetics need to watch. The most important thing to do is, of course, to balance the sugars. However, they also need to balance carbs and spread that throughout the day. The method, however, doesn't differ between types, but type 1 is, of course, less forgiving than type 2. Between people, however, meal planning does change, and that's based on their height, weight, age, and gender. And of course, the most asked question for a newly diagnosed diabetic is, what can I eat? So nutrition for meal planning is essential. Macronutrients, which provide us with energy, which an example of that would be carbohydrates, which is directly affects our blood glucose levels. Diabetics, of course, need to watch this. So getting enough micronutrients is also a very important part. When you can't eat as much of certain foods, you need to make sure that you're getting the right amount of micronutrients, such as vitamins and iron, and low-fat diets are highly recommended for diabetics.
The digestive system. People with diabetes have to follow a strict diet and most of the time have to take specific medications for their digestive system to work properly. If they don't, they can suffer damage because the body doesn't get enough nutrients the body needs. When the blood sugar is too high, the digestive system can get affected. Like, for example, they can get diarrhea or an upset stomach. Pancreatic islet transplant. It's when cells are taken from a donor person and put into a person who has diabetes. The new islets begin to make and produce insulin. Researchers hope that once a person with type 1 diabetes have the transplant, they no longer have to inject insulin daily, which will be very practical when eating and just for their daily living. Insulin. It's a hormone made by the pancreas that allows glucose from carbs in the food we eat to be used for energy or to store glucose for future use. Insulin keeps blood sugar levels from getting too high or too low after a meal. When it's too high, it's called hyperglycemia, and when it's too low, it's called hypoglycemia. Insulin helps the breakdown of fat or protein, and there are natural and artificial types of insulin. Some artificial types include rapid-acting, short-acting, intermediate-acting, and long-acting insulin.
So other than the digestive system, we linked our topic to the circulatory system as well, because of its responsibility for the glucose in the blood. Diabetes can damage the blood vessels when blood glucose levels get too high, and these high blood glucose levels can cause fatty buildup on blood vessel walls and restricts the flow of blood. This is a connection to our topic because of having to watch their blood glucose levels with every meal.
The islet. It's a little device that's attached to the body and it's used for people with type 1 diabetes. What it does, it reads its blood glucose level every 5 minutes, and it releases insulin to bring sugar levels down and glucagon to bring it back up. It's very practical when you eat because then you don't have to prick your finger before and after a meal.
We also link diabetes to the excretory system. With diabetes, you can develop diabetic kidney disease, which can lead to complications like kidney failure. Over time, high blood sugar destroys tiny blood vessels in the kidney. When that happens, the blood can't filter properly, and the protein gets spilled into the urine instead of going into the blood. As kidney disease progresses, more protein is found. This is called proteinuria. Without treatment, kidneys will fail, and dialysis or kidney transplants are required. People who have diabetes tend to urinate more because the body is trying to get rid of the sugar.
So there are two main types of diabetes. Type 1 is where your immune system attacks the insulin that your body makes. And of course the main cause for this is genetic history. However, it can also be caused by certain types of viruses. Type 2 is more common and also has more possible causes to it. It can be through genetic history by developing insulin resistance or from obesity and physical inactivity.
Type 1 diabetes is like walking on a tightrope, monitoring exercise, meal, and just overall lifestyle. If you have too little insulin, you're at risk of kidney failure or blindness. If you have too much insulin, you're vulnerable to a coma or, in the worst case, even death. Type 1 diabetes mostly occurs in younger people. Type 2 diabetes is less severe, but you still need to check your blood glucose level. It still needs to be balanced, which can be very difficult, especially after eating. Type 2 diabetes is considered chronic or progressive disease, and is the most common type of diabetes. Type 2 diabetes often worsens over time if not treated properly, which leads to larger doses of medications. Mostly older people get it, but slowly younger people are getting it too.
And we also did some research on some professional diabetic chefs. This is Luke Hayes Alexander. He's from Toronto. He discovered he had type 1 diabetes at age 6. Growing up, he was surrounded by the art of cooking, and his mother opened her own restaurant after he was born. At age 11, his interest for cooking sparked. Diabetes forced me to make everything, top to bottom, from scratch, he says. It influenced how I cooked professionally because everything was fresh, gorgeous, and handmade. Sam Talbot is another professional diabetic chef. He discovered he had diabetes at age 12. Growing up, his grandmother was his greatest cooking idol. The way I eat, the way I exercise, how I travel, and where I travel. All those things have an effect on my life, and diabetes is just another way, one of those elements that falls into it. So instead of categorizing it as this terminal illness, it's not even a bump in the road. It's just a pathway, it's just a path along the way, he explains. So over the course of 5 days, Laura, Becky, and myself, we ate as if we were diabetics, and we even made a blog on it. The biggest challenge for me was seeing all the food that I couldn't eat while other people were eating them. So for example, at work, we had just accomplished a big goal, and so my manager bought cake for everybody. So fortunately, I had brought a snack along, so I was just eating carrots while everybody was eating cake. So that kind of sucked.
So I love eating sweets, chips, chocolate cake, and at midnight, as well as snacks at all hours of the day. I'm sorry, I'm very unhealthy. And so it was harder than I thought, and it makes me look at people with diabetes with admiration for being able to do this every day. And if you're interested, please check out our website. There's the name on it under one of the pictures. And if you're up for a challenge, do this diet.
So overall, the diet was not actually as bad as I thought it would be. The first few days were really hard, just based on the fact that I couldn't eat what I was craving. And it was also hard to control the portions and not just eat whatever and whenever I wanted to. However, by the end of the week, I basically lost all of those cravings that I had. Of course, it didn't stop me from eating pizza on Saturday. I think this is a really cool experience, just to see how different diabetics' diets are compared to my average diet, and I have a new respect for them. So this is the paper that we based our entire diet on. It shows the serving sizes of the foods that we could eat, as well as the amounts of servings per meal. So we had 3 to 4 servings per meal. And this page also, this one shows the carbohydrates that we had to watch, and the next page, which is on the back, this shows the other servings for the other foods. It also shows roughly the amounts according to a plate. So for example, half the plate should be vegetables, a quarter should be proteins, and the other quarter should be grains. And these servings were how we handled our entire diet. So now if there are any questions, we will answer those. Okay, thank you for listening to us.